there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with kind of an update to the last video I made about where net decking's not the problem, where rules lawyering is the problem with competitive play. And lo and behold, Pro Tour Aether Revolt delivered. They did not just deliver on this controversy, they've just full swing home run delivered on a perfect example of what I call rules lawyering and why it needs to go out of the competitive scene. It is a little bit tricky. We're going to talk about how people can actually play, they can feign kind of what we call noobness at a tournament to try to eke out rules. I know that Alex Bertoncini, I think his name was notorious for this, for like, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that, when he obviously did know the rules and did misplay on purpose to try to eke out your opponent saying, no, it's okay, take it back type thing. So basically what I'm saying here is Alex would do something on purpose, and if he didn't get caught, then he would get this free whatever the violation was of the game state. And if he did get caught, he would just be like, oh, oops, sorry, my bad. And so rules are there for a reason to stop this sort of thing, but I think it goes further the other way, and this is a perfect example of what I can't stand with rules lawyering and why context matters and intent matters. So what I mean by context is you really need to look at the game state to see if the infraction actually is going to affect the game whatsoever. If not, then I think that's when we should let things slide. And this is a perfect example about how the ambiguity of what this particular play was didn't affect the board state in any way, shape, or form, and in my opinion is just a huge example of rules lawyering 101 and just despicable play by the opponent. And man, I just cannot justify or rationalize or even empathize with what the opponent is trying to do here. So here we go. So there was a round 8 feature match. Both of them were 7-0. I think it was green-black. We'll look at the footage here in a second. Green-black snakes versus the Mardu vehicles. And right here on Wizard's statement, which I think this is just a complete doubling down, trying to protect their judge, trying to like protect their own. I think they know they were wrong. I really do. I really think that Wizards is just backpedaling and really trying to double down on their a ruling that was not the correct ruling, in my opinion. So in round 8 of the Pro Tour Aether Revolt, an incident occurred in which the active player indicated that they are entering combat and passed priority. Bull. He never passed priority. That we'll look at the video. There is no clear indication that the opponent has passed priority. The opponent passed priority back, at which time the active player attempted to crew a vehicle and resolve a trigger with the weld-fast engineer. It is ruled that that through the player's actions, they were in a declare attacker step and were unable to perform the actions that the active player wished. This is a correct interpretation of blah 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 blah. A statement such as "I'm ready for combat" or declare attackers offers to keep passing priority until opponent has priority in the beginning of combat step. Opponents are assumed to be acting then unless they specify otherwise. Wow! That statement is just so terrible because it just really, it goes back to what Bill Clinton, the infamous, it depends on what the definition of is type thing, or like in my example that I gave in my video is when I said okay when my opponent cast Rakdos's return. What I was just trying to let my opponent know that I acknowledge that he's casting a spell. I didn't say okay, it resolved. And it's almost like in this case the judges would have interpreted against me, even though my intentions were clear with 8 mana and 2 Restoration Angels in my hand. I had a plan, I had a play, and then they would just have to argue what the definition of okay was. In this scenario, the opponent says combat, and the opponent says, okay, yeah, sure, combat, and then he tries to do so. We'll look at the video here, and that's exactly what's happening. It makes it even more muddled, makes it even more embarrassing because this is not an English-speaking, native English speaker. And so it gets so convoluted at that point. Different play groups even have different ways that is just the norm of doing things. In my play group, that's exactly how we do it. Is we say combat. That means, can I enter my combat? Because your opponent, this is very important to know for newer players too. is that you cannot go into your combat until your opponent says so. Your opponent gets a reaction in your main phase 1. In fact, there's a lot of things you want to do in main phase 1. And for example, like you have to, if you have that, what's the 1-mana artifact 2 and tap, it's the Ice Manipulator wannabe card, you can tap down a creature. You need to do that before they go to the declare attacker. So a lot of times you do that in the, when they say combat, then you go, no, I'm going to tap down your guy. Otherwise, you're going to miss that opportunity to do so. So if there was any sort of scenario like that in the board state, I think that the judge might have been able to make a clear, easier ruling, because I am under the, like, if there's anything that can change the board state or divulge information, then we have to go to the letter of the law. You have to go down to a T, otherwise your opponents, the Alex Bertoccinis out there, can try to eke out excess information and then do takey backsies and say, oh, we haven't moved into it yet. And it creates a very, very just terrible situation. It's one of the reasons why I love playing on Magic Online, because all this crap is completely automated. There is no room for argument on what, you know, step you're in. Yes, people can do like misplays with like clicking F2 too quickly or F6. I've done that multiple times. Like, oh crap, I wish I would have done this there. Or, oh, the trigger, I want to do this, but the automation already went through. But that's their own fault. They have no one to blame but themselves. In this one, it gets very messy when there's an outside party like judges basically interpreting where we are. I lost a judge ruling because I didn't argue as much as my opponent did. That was the whole deciding factor, is my opponent was very vehement about, like, he was like vehemently arguing that, no, we're in the end step, we're in step. And I'm, no, we're not. We are in the main phase. We're not in the end step. But he just kept going, yes, 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 yes. And the judge ruled in his favor, which I think is ridiculous, because at that point, again, intent was everything in board state, was everything, and it ruled against the board state. So let's just go over to the good old problem here, and we'll watch it from or from when it starts.
We'll check back in on our main table. Looks
so
like they're still getting things sorted out there.
So look at the board state. Look right here at the board state. The opponent is tapped out. Look at this guy's fucking smug face. I cannot stand this. This is... This guy just has the biggest, smuggiest face ever. You're tapped out, dude. You're tapped out. You can't even do anything. You can't respond. You just played a Rishkar. You can't... It has Summoning Sickness. Your other card is tapped. I think that's a Whining Constrictor that's down there. You cannot interact with your opponent right here. So, regardless if there was this, like, a miscommunication, the intention is clear. He wants to crew his Heart of Quran, and then give it the plus trigger off of the Weldfast, whatever the Weldfast card is called. So, this guy's just trying to angle shoot. He's trying to eke out any way possible to take less damage. Because this is huge. This is a huge play. That's 7 damage. That is 7 damage that's going to come through here. And in fact, I think they rule against him as well, that he, since he's in declare attackers, he actually crews the Heart of Quran after the, I don't know if he actually cast the, I think he did cast the Weldfast Engineer. But for example, though, they would have ruled saying that maybe if he wanted to swing with the Weldfast Engineer, that he couldn't anymore too, because it's still tap crewing a Heart of Quran that can no longer attack because he's missed the phase. So the intent and the context matter so much here. The intent of the player is very, very crystal clear. A lot of times when you're in the highest competitive, you just get under the routine of doing things in the what we call the proper phase. Because if your opponent did have like some sort of mana untapped here, it probably wouldn't be the proper thing to crew that in the main phase. You do want to wait until you go into the combat step to then pass priority back to your opponent saying, hey, are you going to pass your main phase 1 priority back to me so we can enter combat? Yes, that's the correct way to do that. In this case, he could have played the safe route, which is what Wizards is trying to argue, but is going to lead to some very messy scenarios in the future where players are afraid to do the more proper or correct way to do stuff, which is going into the combat phase. So here, yeah, the entire situation, yes, could have been avoided if he was in main phase 2, crewed his Heart of Quran. Again, you don't want to do that in a ton of scenarios, though. If there's any sort of untapped mana with like a Grasp of Darkness up, you want to make your opponent have some decisions in the beginning of combat phase. So anyway, let's just continue here.
I only can target.
So you can tell he can't even speak the greatest English here.
For attack with this creature.
And he's saying his
looks
intent.
like they've just finished with the ruling, and Cesar is just clarifying what it is that he's able to do now that the ruling's been given.
Oh, the smugness. Look at that smug face. Who is this guy and who is the sponsor? Because I think that's the way that we need to get the rules lawyering out of here.
By the way, you do see the players wearing headphones in the feature match area. I saw a few of you asking about that. And that's just so that they don't hear the ambient sound from us. We've got a viewing area behind them.
Okay, so I would even say that muddles the communication a lot too, with having the headphones on. It's going to be... Headphones distract me like crazy playing any sort of online games. I don't know, it's just like a audio thing with even balance and hearing. It messes me up. So keep that in mind. The audio is not the perfect ideal scenario or headphones isn't the perfect ideal scenario to communicate with your opponent. But yeah, anyway, just back to my whole point. Wasn't it Card Hoarder that got rid of the Kent Ketter or whoever, the rest in peace dude, that the rules lawyering kind of sleight of hand thing? That is the way to get these guys out of the competitive scene. It seems like Wizards is going to rule the letter of the law every time rather than the spirit of the law. But where we do have a bit of power as just players, as observers, as people that want to keep the integrity of the game, is to punish the rules lawyers. I remember that Jackie Lee got crucified on a Twitch chat. I think she was commentating for a Star City Open when John Finkel was maintaining the board state. And I want to see that. He wasn't helping his opponent. He was maintaining the board state. His opponent was trying to do something, and he missed a trigger that was not really missed a trigger. It's arguable, but John Finkel's like, no, this is here. This has to happen here. I actually take another damage because your guy is getting this benefit. And Jackie Lee went insane. I wish I could find that clip. If anyone finds that, link it in the description below, of where she just goes off on John Finkel about what a bad player he is for helping his opponent, when John Finkel is just trying to maintain the integrity of the game. Conley Woods wrote a beautiful article about this as well, clear back in the day when I started playing, and rules lawyering was just astronomically horrible when I started playing competitive Magic. It was... Instead of like 1 out of 5 players, it was 4 out of 5 players were these rules lawyering, and Conley Woods called them tryhards. He said that all of these players that were trying to get into the competitive scene, or really trying to prove themselves, get on a pro tour or do well at a pro tour, they're tryhards. So they're going to try every way possible to try to win a game, whether or not it is keeping the integrity of the game or the integrity of sportsmanship or competition. So that's probably what this particular person is. And the only way that we can fight back is hit them where that hurts, which is their sponsors. If this person is sponsored, quit patronizing their sponsorship and send a clear message. We do not want this. You do not want this attitude to reflect the sportsmanship or the competitive play of your product. That's just the best way to do it. We saw Card Hoarder. I think it was Card Hoarder. Correct me if I'm wrong here. We got the outrage with Kent Ketter or whatever his name was, and they released him. At first they stood by him saying, well, he didn't really technically do anything wrong. The judges ruled in his favor. And the outrage was so high that they're like, yeah, I guess it doesn't showcase our brand image. We want John Finkels. We want Brian Kibblers. We want people that actually do maintain the integrity of the game and show class and sportsmanship. So that's the best way that we can combat this. I'm sorry, that's the only way to do is witch hunts. That is the only way to keep these people in check. If his behavior is celebrated, then he is going to continue to do it. If his behavior is blasted, then he'll think twice about, is it worthwhile to, have this smug face on camera? And it's so dumb too, because I'm sure this player, if it was reciprocated, would be crying bloody murder right now. I meant to do this. I really wanted to. And that's what I hate the most about rules lawyers, is they don't give you that same benefit of the doubt. They will English you and take any little opportunity of misspeak to eke an advantage, and they'll do this against shy players. They'll do this against people that don't have English as their first language. They'll do this against whoever they're sitting across against. Any way they can intimidate, bully, English you, rules lawyer, they will do it. All right, let's continue here.
With rabid Magic fans watching.
Yeah, the Magic fans have been extremely loud, so the headphones are necessary. bringing signs for their favorite players. And
Yeah,
whatnot.
yawn. Yawn, you smug.
And it's kind of cool.
Oh,
that
you
the system we have
smug.
set up is there's microphones on those so that the players can talk to each other because, as we see, communicating between the two is very important, and the judges can kind of plug themselves into the conversation as well, and so that they can hear and the players can
To be
hear.
consistent, the point is you are proposing a shortcut to declare attackers. You say combat.
Okay,
means
let's
you
stop
want to
right there.
declare
Did you guys hear that?
So at this point,
You are proposing a shortcut to declare attackers by saying combat. Wrong. Wrong, wizards. I use combat to say, hey, can we combat? Question mark. Can we go into my combat? There is a thing called main phase 2. Your opponent has a chance to, they have priority. So it starts with the active player. The active player has priority in main phase 1. So in main phase 1, you go, the active player starts. Every interaction then gives the non-active player a chance to respond. So before going into combat, there is an opportunity for the non-active player to respond to main phase 2. If he does respond to it and does something, then the active player once again gets priority back, and it goes back and forth until both players have nothing to do, and then it goes into the combat phase. So all he said was combat, and now Wizards is saying that is proposing a shortcut? Bull! And first of all, he even acknowledged his trigger. So the beginning of the combat, the Weldfast triggers, and that should cause like a stop before, if you play it on a TGO, it will cause a stop before you go into declare attackers. Right then and there, the trigger will go on the stack. He acknowledges it. So it goes on the stack. It doesn't even have to have a target. Maybe it does. So, I mean, you could make the argument that he can't target the Heart of Quran, and he has to target like a Scrap Heap Scrounger because it's not an active creature yet. I might actually be okay with that, but I don't think that that's technically right. So let's continue with this proposed combat phase.
this trigger is missed. You forgot because you are declaring attackers.
Okay, he
This
never said
cannot be
declare.
true.
Oh my god, that smug face. Look at him. Oh, I'm gonna have to go throw up somewhere. Anyway, so the. No, that's not what happened. That is not what happened. It's not a misforgotten trigger. Oh, wow. Because he proposed it. Oh.
If I can say any attacker.
At this point, you are in declare attackers, so you have to point to the creatures that are attacking.
All right, so you can
cannot
hear what
put
the
any
judge is
triggered
saying.
abilities on the stack.
I would not be
Do you
shocked
understand,
if
or-
we had an appeal here. That does happen quite often, though.
Spanish, I can collect one. Sure.
So he even says.
So actually requesting a Spanish-speaking judge, which
I
is also
can't-
a very good
he's having
idea.
a
That's a
hard
good idea,
time
too.
just
Making,
Just
sure,
to
making
make
sure
sure.
you're communicating clearly.
Yeah.
Even with the judge.
So what
'cause
we're going to do
Spanish-
is we're going to go look at table B, where we've got Toru Inoue, and he's playing
Oh,
against.
so anyway,
Jan
they end
Cassander.
up with the appeal and everything else. They do end up ruling in Smuggy McSmugfist's favor. Again, context matters in this state. There's no way that he can respond to anything here. It'd be a completely different scenario if the guy had a Grass of Darkness and 2 mana, 2 black mana up, because that would show that there could be some sort of decision to be made. That before combat, he could have Grass of Darkness the Weldfast Engineer so it didn't get a trigger. Like, all of that, all of the context matter. Where the guy is completely tapped out and at the mercy of his opponent, that is complete Rules Learning 101. It's complete BS. So a few other things I would just want to show, even though I've been rambling and just like raging. Hopefully the it doesn't sound too bad in the audio here. So let's go over to the good old top comment on the Magic subreddit. And so this Mr. Token says, not much except them doubling up on the fact that it was a technical right decision. Yeah, he's not saying that he agrees it's a technical right decision. Wizards is saying that they're doubling up, saying that they made the right decision. But we already knew that. People were shocked because the intention of the active player was clear, and his opponent still could take advantage of it of a technicality. It's just sad that the game's outcome wasn't determined by playing Magic, but by abusing a rule when there was no ambiguity about the game state. Thank you. Exactly. That is my feeling 100%. That sportsmanship says, let it happen. Integrity of the game says, let it happen. The context, the game state, everything says, this should happen. he was trying to eke out an advantage outside the game. It is the same thing with flopping in soccer. I gave up on soccer as a competitive sport because the flopping was just out of control. So many games were decided by who could flop the best, who could draw a penalty. And I talked to soccer players and they were just saying, oh, it's strategy. Oh, please. Oh, please. It's unsportsmanlike conduct. In my sport, I love hockey. If you flop, you can get a double major for flopping, or double minor, I think. Someone has to correct me in the rules, which is a 4-minute penalty, which means 2 power play goals can be scored on the flopping. So if it's a very flagrant flop, then there's a huge repercussions for doing so. So that stops people in the future from trying to flop or trying to draw a penalty unsportsmanlike. Then the team can be fined, the coach can be fined, and the player most likely will be fined. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of anti-flopping based procedures, because we know that people are still going to flop if they can somehow, like, it's very, very tough. Like when it's a he said, she said situation in Magic too, it is very tough to decide a lot of times you will have to go with the letter of the law. So in hockey, for example, if on the spot, if a referee has to make a decision and they decide to make a decision that a penalty was, and then they go back 2 days later and review it, there's a board in hockey that reviews things, then they can go back and say, yeah, that was a flop. Well, we're going to suspend the player. We're going to fine him. So he gets 2 game suspension without pay. And, there's at least some sort of justice divvied out. I propose the same thing should happen in Magic. We should have ways to prevent this crap from happening. So right here, the second comment says Kai responded to this similarity on Facebook. So let's pull up the Kai's response, which I think is absolutely beautiful here. So it says, let me pull this up really quick so I can read it. The combat ruling round 8 of Pro Tour Aether Revolt. The combat ruling during round 8 annoyed me so much that I decided to write something. You can watch the game here. Nguyen versus Segovia, game 1. The judge call comes about 5 minutes to 20 minutes in. I'll sum up the situation. He has 3/2 artifact creatures, a 4/4 vehicle, main phase 1. He casts Well-Vest Engineer that has a beginning of combat on your turn. Target creature you control gets +2/+0. He said the word combat and tabs his engineer to crew the 4/4 vehicle. So it is. I do believe that the trigger goes on the stack and doesn't have to have a target at that point. I think that is actually the correct play. His opponent immediately calls a judge because he doesn't call a judge for missed Well-Fast Engineer trigger. He calls a judge because apparently someone somewhere decided that saying the word combat means they're declaring attackers. That's the first time I've heard this. Kai Bude is he's a Hall of Famer, by the way. Both me and my opponents have declared combat thousands of times to enter the combat step. If you Google announcing combat on Magic the Gathering, the top result is the combat phase. Nothing here connects combat with declare attackers. It is very clear. That is very clearly defined as declaring attacker step. If WotC or the DCI want to mint phrases people can be called on, that should maybe be on their website or in the rule book, because otherwise it's a load of garbage. I tried 10 minutes to Google the phrase combat means you're declaring attackers and was not successful. 20 years ago, people asked their opponents, okay, can I lightning bolt you? If they answered yes, they said, oh, I changed my mind, but you passed priority and thus ended your turn. Oh man, rules lawyering was so horrid 20 years ago, 10 years ago. What happened in this match for me is on the same level. In an ideal world, I would have wanted to see an unsportsmanlike conduct warning for Nguyen as the outcome of the judge call. His opponent was obviously not very fluent in English and technically not a perfect Magic player, but his intention was crystal clear. I want to emphasize that point. I'm sticking with Kai here. He wanted to enter his attack and activate his vehicle to attack. Calling him on the miss trigger is perfectly fine. Magically skipping the beginning of combat step he very obviously wanted to use to crew his vehicle is not. That's rules lawyering on a very low level, and Magic over the past 10 to 20 years has done a lot to make exactly this not possible. Remember the Jackie Lee stab wound triggers? That was a huge turning point with Magic the Gathering rules lawyer. It set a huge precedent that they are willing to DQ people from an event for trying to take advantage of a not fluent English speaker. That was the case in the Jackie Lee one, I'm pretty sure. Again, what Nguyen should have done here is wait what Segovia does after he crews his vehicle. If he then wants to use the trigger of his well-fest engineer, you then call the judge and explain that saying combat he clearly indicated that entering the combat phase, no one can argue that. Then he crewed his vehicle before attacks. The intention for that was obviously clear between the word combat and looking at Nguyen to see that he confirms we're in the combat step. He immediately tapped his engineer to crew his vehicle. Now on Pro Tour level, I suppose that a missed trigger on the engineer, and that's something Nguyen has a legitimate claim that was forgotten. I don't know though, because it happens at the beginning of combat. That's exactly when the trigger. So saying combat, saying can we go into the beginning of combat, I would still say that has to take place for the trigger to occur. That had to happen at the very beginning of the combat step, and you can't play non-triggered effects like crewing ability without putting the engineer on the stack first and announcing a target for that. Oh yeah, okay, so I was right? So it has to have a target when it goes on the stack. Ruling that saying combat means you're skipping straight from your main phase to declare attackers is beyond insane to me. There were beginning of combat effects, both a trigger and a crewing process. Of course you announce the combat step, and how do you announce it? By saying combat. Wizards of the Coast called it the combat step. MTG, the Grand Prix, and Pro Tour circuits are international games. I don't know how many different nationalities are playing it at Pro Tour Aether Revolt, but it's surely above 50. You cannot expect everyone to be fluent in English. Again, Segovia's intention was 100% clear. He communicated it perfectly. He wanted to enter the combat step, crew his vehicle, and attack. He probably also wanted to use an engineer trigger, but well, he messed up the timing for that. But he actually still could have targeted in my opinion, still could have targeted a Scrap Each Scrounger. Let's see, where was I? There were seconds between him saying combat and tapping his creature to crew. He didn't tap other creatures to indicate he is in declare attackers or anything like that. Making this ruling basically means if you are not 100% fluent English, and apparently now you have to be fluent in DCI English as well, who knows what some other word might mean. What is the definition of is? You could end your turn by saying, okay, that's fine. You are priced in never talking to your opponent at all. Does the DCI really want to have a translating judge at every table because people are afraid to be rules lawyered out of their turn if they try to communicate with their opponent in English? Is that where we want to get to? Again, Magic has moved away from exactly that, and I'm honestly not sure what happened today in this game at the Pro Tour and how the ruling ended up the way it was. I almost hope that Segovia did something wrong when he talked to the judge and messed something up there. But it's all on video, and nailing a non-English native speaker who is very, very clearly wanting to enter his attack step to crew a vehicle at the beginning of combat on the word combat when he wanted to enter this combat step is not understandable on so many levels to me. I'm extremely happy that Segovia ended up winning the match. I honestly don't know win at all, but just from that judge call, I'm tempted to hope for an 0-8 performance tomorrow. To be fair, he was sitting at a 7-0 at the Pro Tour, and that puts a lot of pressure on you. But still, that judge call and ruling is just not acceptable from my ethics point of view. Kai, you won so many points with me today. I am not an old school Magic player, so Kai Bude is kind of out of my competitive play. He was, when I got into competitive play, John Feakle, Brian Kibler, Owen Turtenwald, those were kind of the big name players. Kai is before that. He plays at some Pro Tours every now and again because he does get an appearance fee. But that is exactly, he, in my opinion, wins the internet today. He wins the Magic, the Gathering, sportsmanship, ethics. He's a great ambassador for the game. It is someone they should be trying to pump up and prop up. So props to Kai Bude. Thank you for that statement. That's exactly how I feel. And let me know in the comment section how you feel now that we're getting into 30-minute discussion about this insane situation that happened. I can't stand this at the local level. I can't stand this at the PTQ level. I can't stand this at Grand Prix. They've all happened to all of us at one point in a time. It just makes you want to pull your hair out. It makes you not want to play competitive Magic. I have quit competitive Magic before from time to time. I'm tempted to quit competitive Magic again because I just do not want to be associated with a game that does not care about sportsmanship, that really wants to go with letters of the law and really wants to punish people for missteps, for miscommunications. But again, I'm a blacklisted, degenerate person that Wizard hates, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. Anyway, I want to know your comments in the comment section below. And really, if rules lawyers, how do you justify? I want to say how do you sleep at night, but it's just a damn game. So, It's some people's livelihood, though. It's some people put a lot of heart and soul in this, and I just can't stand people trying to find any way possible to win the game without playing the damn game. Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.